what makes you top shelf is how you act under fire and how you go deal with the problem. You admit it, own it, go on, go fix it, and then, worry about compensation or credit later.
The sound of that tractor means it's time for us to go to work. You're listening to the Give Us the Dirt podcast, powered by Hoopaugh Grading Company. My name is Brandon, and I am your host. So today we are honored to introduce someone that I personally believe to be one of the best leaders in the industry and someone that I have tremendous respect for. Jonathon Strack, CEO of Strack Incorporated. One of our past guests, Jason Richmond of BuildWit, used the tagline "From shovel to the C-suite" in his episode. Jonathon is another great example of that kind of success story. At 12 years old, he found himself working in a ditch every day after school. Almost 30 years later, he's now one of the industry's most accomplished and admired leaders with a remarkable journey to his current role as CEO. He champions and models servant leadership, emphasizing generosity and prioritizing others. Under his guidance, Strack Incorporated has achieved phenomenal growth, doubling in size and even expanding into new market segments and construction disciplines. Jonathon's visionary approach to business extends well beyond the office walls and into his community, which is evident through his commitment to education and philanthropy. Dirt World, get ready as we ask Jonathon Strack to help give us the dirt today. Jonathon, welcome.
Well, thank you. You're a little kind with your intro, but I appreciate it very much.
People don't welcome you into a room with that kind of intro every day. You deserve it.
No, we're a little more humble than that, but yeah, thank you. Thanks for the kind words.
And you know what? That is one of the things that I love about you and your organization. I was sitting there thinking about it that, I would hope that the majority of people that know me would say, hey, that's a pretty good guy. But I have no doubt that if you asked enough people, there's going to be someone that says, that Brandon, he's not for me. I don't know about that guy. I don't like that guy. But I don't think there's a person that knows you that doesn't love you. Everybody that I've talked to about Jonathon Strack has said, man, I love that guy.
Well, I appreciate it. Your reputation precedes you long before you ever arrive anywhere. And that's something that my dad taught me, and, really be humble about what you do and serve everybody in every walk of life in anything you do in an encounter,
we're going to get to that too, because I think that's one of the keys to the culture that you've created, that humility and that servant leadership, which I want to talk more about that. But take us back to 12 years old. So the intro, I mentioned that you found yourself with a shovel in a ditch at 12 years old after school. Is that right?
Yeah. I was working summers, and this is something I knew I wanted to get into, really. I say from birth, but as soon as I could go to a job with my dad, I wanted to get on a track hoe, and I wanted to go hang out with the guys. And, I remember at 6 years old sitting in one of our longtime operators' laps operating a 245 excavator, So it was a pretty cool childhood. I'd get to shoot dynamite on the job, and that was super cool. They tell you, hey, hit the button, get in the bucket.
What little boy does not have the dream of being able to do that?
Yeah. It was a little boy's dream, and it started at a young age. I knew this is what I wanted to do, and go hang out with Dad and work with him.
So you're 12. You're heading out there after school. You love this, and I can see why you love this. Now your grandfather started the business, right?
Yeah, Grandpa started it in 1948. He came to Atlanta from Wisconsin and took over payments on a D6 bulldozer that he co-signed on with his brother. And, he was your local one-man band, one crew outfit for quite a while. And, my dad's the one that really grew the outfit from the early 70s up until, I started really running the business in his place. And, at at 12, I was blessed to have a bunch of guys that taught me just like I was a member of their family. You know, construction was very different then. You know, for me, you're talking, this is early to mid 90s. And, you had this really long burn of apprenticeship. No matter what you did, you worked your way up. You didn't have that much turnover. So I feel like back then, you had a much tighter family at work than you may now because you didn't have people really getting promoted as quick. Companies weren't as large. To me, I feel like at least here in Atlanta, it was a smaller, slower city compared to what it is today.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's hard. You don't get that much anymore. We've got people that will start with us now, and in 90 days they want to know why they haven't been promoted. And to your point, it was a much longer burn back then, and you knew that this wasn't just a stop. This was a career. This is where you were going to work, and possibly for the rest of your life back then. And that had been modeled, I guess, by your grandfather. Was your grandfather still in the business when you started at 12 years old, or?
No, unfortunately, he wasn't with us anymore. He passed when I was about 6. So, I got to know him, but not for a long while.
And your dad is, you mentioned that you've kind of stepped in for him. Is he still in the business?
He's still in the business. He works, I'd say, on average over a whole year, about 3 days a week. He does what he wants. He's 72 right now. And, he does what he wants when he wants, where he wants. And, everybody loves seeing him, clients or employees. So, he's an asset anywhere he goes, and he's always smiling, so, hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. That's where you get it from.
He's better than I am at it, but I try to live up to the role model. How about that?
Well, you've done a good job of it. You talk about a long burn. Your career, going back to 12 in the ditch, you've gone from laborer to operator to superintendent to project manager to vice president and now in the CEO seat. For those people that say, "Hey, you can't work your way up from the bottom," you've done it.
Yeah, and I mean our whole company's that way. We're a company full of guys and gals that either may have not gone to college, have done some college, got a couple guys that have completed degrees, but construction's one of the few places I feel like you're limited by your will and your ambition and your work ethic. And you know, anytime I'm talking to somebody that's in high school or just out of high school, my pitch to them is I said, look, give me 3 to 5 good years. Where else can you go with no college debt and be potentially making 6 figures in 5 years? As long as you're just willing to show up, work hard, and be a sponge for anything and everything you see. And, you don't have to lead the pack every day. There's a time in your career where, you need to be there, you need to be learning, and that gets you ready for where you're going. And I feel like societally, that's not something we value anymore.
It's not, but what a great pitch. I mean, who would not want an opportunity like that to know that 3 to 5 years of investment of hard work and just proving that you've got the will and you've got the work ethic, that you're going to have a opportunity to make good money, to have a lifelong career in an industry that is ever changing and evolving, and it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Like, that's a great sales pitch.
That's what we think too. And the other thing, the way I look at it is, as a country, we've said for a generation or so, let's say 30 years, go to college, come out of high school, go to college, somehow everything's okay. And we've neglected any kind of basic needs and services industry, whether it's nursing, teaching, being a bank teller, working for folks like us, and I feel like for the next 20 or 30 years, the ones of us that are already in those fields that are in high demand, we should get paid and paid well for what we do, and in turn, so should the people that work with us every day. And I think job security is not something you got to worry about too much, as long as you're working for the right outfits that are diversified and got good client bases.
I agree. I agree. Jonathon, those are the kind of things that there was a time you didn't have to think about that kind of stuff.
No.
You thought about getting on that machine and operating that machine, or you thought about that project and getting through that project. Now you're having to think on a global level. You're really having to think about not just how do we fill the seats today, how are we going to fill the seats over the next 10, 20 years? How is that transition? Do you like that role? Do you like doing that? Or are there days where you say, man, I just wish I was back in the dozer?
It's fun. Sure, it does take you away from the craft itself. That's the whole reason you got in the business. You love, being on tractors, being around guys, and doing something outside, taking pride in your work, and being able to challenge yourself and your guys every day. And that's the one thing as a superintendent. At the end of every day, you could look back and say, "We did this," whatever it may be. It was tangible. Now, your victories are fewer and far further between, and more they're overarching as an organization. Yeah, to speak to how you got to think, the way I see it now, the opportunities that are coming in the construction field, they're bigger, larger, and longer than anything we were typically used to looking at. And, all of a sudden, as a region, we're the benefactors of manufacturing plants coming into play. In Georgia, our ports expanded. We've had a boom in warehouse space. We've had a migration of population to the south. And all these things create a whole lot of work for us, for all the highway contractors. And, more and more as I talk to our peers and allies and associates in business, it's everybody's as busy as they can be, and how can we take on any more, and trying to figure out how to grow your talent from within, recruit folks, and quickly assimilate them into who you are, and what your standard is. I feel like that's what you got to do, and otherwise,
Just that. That's all you got to do.
yeah, yeah,
That's a
well,
big task.
oh, it's a huge
That's a
task.
big task.
Yeah, yeah, and we're the type that we're going to try a whole lot at once, and not be afraid of failure, because you're going to fail. Like, nothing's going to go great every day when you try something new for the first, second, or even third time.
Well,
Sometimes.
y'all done a good job of that, Jonathon. I've noticed that in the growth that there seems to be this theme of let's try it. We've never done that. Let's try it. Why not? We can move into that space. Is that come from you? Is that your personality, or kind of a, hey, you know what? I'm not scared of it. Let's try it, and then if it doesn't work, we'll back up and try again.
Yeah, I learned that from Dad, and if you've got a good team that's on the ride with you, I mean, there's very little you can accomplish if you've got a good motivated team behind you. And it starts with being humble about, hey, I don't know everything. Having an open forum about, all right, what do you think? And let's make the best educated decision we can about whatever we're about to go do. And as long as you got your team on your side, you're going to be successful, or you're going to learn from failure.
Well, either way, you're gonna learn, but you got to move. You got to move, and you got to
Yeah.
press into this space. Let's talk. You keep referring to your team, and I love that about you. That humility that is defines the culture of your company. What is the size of your team? What does that team look like today?
So we've got 600 folks working with us in total every day. And, we've got obviously our executives and VPs, and I'm blessed to have, 8 people training and recruiting every day. I'm blessed to have a really healthy safety staff. And, we've got nearly 40 people, on the mechanical support side and fabrication side, all that kind of thing. And got dealer partners, and really, really good subcontractors that we're loyal to, and they're loyal to us. So, you know, it's an effort and partnership no matter where you go throughout the company and throughout the sub partners. So,
That's a
um,
big company, Jonathan.
yeah, and I mean, y'all have been good role models for the training and recruitment. And we paid y'all a visit a while back, and you know y'all are at doctorate level. We're
No, sir. No,
we're
sir.
coming out of high school at our
Hey,
level, man. So,
we're learning from
y'all,
your team, and a lot of people cannot wrap their brains around the fact that you've got 8 people dedicated just to training and development. And now that's a lot. That's a huge investment. Plus, you've gone out. I understand you guys have done a academy similar to what we have here at Hoopaugh. Is that correct?
yeah, we've got an 8-acre proving ground about a mile and a half from the shop. We did a long term lease with the city of Fairburn where we're located, and we put a triple wide trailer on the site as a classroom, but we put 7 pieces of brand new equipment out there to basically have our live sandbox to train in a low pressure environment and vet folks in a low pressure environment. We're even getting to the point where we're in the middle of setting a tool board up right now. And as we hire, craft labor on, it's to the point now where we've got to instruct on everything. So it's, hey, tell me what a sharpshooter is. Tell me what a flat shovel is. Measure something with this tape measure. Great. If you can, you're here. You're going to learn about our standards. If not, you may spend a day in the trailer watching some Build Wit training videos, learning what some of those basics are. But as long as you're willing to show up, we're willing to train you. We need motivated, dedicated folks, and I don't care if they've got skills or not at this point. We need good people.
Yeah, we can teach you the skills, but we can't give you that will and determination and that work ethic. But I am a little jealous, Jonathan. To be honest with you, you said that we were at the doctorate level. We do not have a training ground. Yeah, we got the academy, we got the simulators, we got trainers and people dedicated to doing it, but I'm a little bit jealous of the proving ground. That's a pretty cool thing. I wish we had something like that.
Yeah, and it just we were talking and trying to figure out, all right, what do we do to really set ourselves apart in the market and show that we are genuinely behind this. And we really do want this to be a long-term commitment. And what better way than to do an actual sandbox with actual brand new equipment and really say, look, we're going to train you on the stuff you're going to be using in 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, rather than, as we were going throughout this process and we were getting equipment quotes, my salesman was like, why do you want to put a brand new truck out there?
You didn't just put what you didn't use anymore, what was sitting on the yard. You went out and bought equipment for this.
Yeah, we bought equipment. So, yeah, and it's, it's an expense. No doubt it's an expense, and not everybody is going to be able to do it. Some of this is, hey, scale our size has afforded the ability to do it. And, I hope as an industry one day we can do this together. But right now, it's going to take a while to get everybody on the same page to say, hey, we want to make a dedicated commitment. And, at some point, it's got to go as far as the clients. Like, look, you've got to start putting value on values. Like, if we're a percent higher than everybody else, but we're going to have qualified workforce that has been trained. We have trainers on staff. We have chaplains on staff for health and well-being, and chaplains third party. There's some value in this at some point. We're going to get your job done better, more competently, and we're going to be a better communicator at the end of the day if we're all on the same page and we're setting a standard. And that's just going to take an evolution in thinking and construction, I think. That's our generation to do.
I couldn't agree with you more. You're right. I'm curious as to, are you finding success with that? Because all of us want to say, look, Mr. Client, Miss Client, whoever you are, like, there's a value. You want us to be the best. You want to partner with us because you want the best. But to have the best, it requires this level of training. It requires this kind of equipment. It requires this kind of investment into our people. And are you willing to pay for that? Have you found that you're able to get that? Are you able to sell Strack for more than your competitors because of what you're able to provide?
It's tough. I mean, it is tough. You know it. I mean, what I found, if I'm going to meet a new client, I'm interviewing them as much as they're interviewing me. And I've gotten to the point where I'm blunt enough to say, hey, here's our standard. And in an effort for a good working relationship, our expectation is we get honesty, transparency, and good communication reciprocated. My saying is, I'm not wired to step foot out of the truck and fight. I don't want to conduct ourselves that way, and don't expect that we've bid the job not fully quantifying the risk. With all available resources, we're trying to give you a complete picture of what it's going to take to build the job and what it's going to cost. And that may not always win me the most work, but it'll get plenty of respect. You're being transparent up front. And what you find is the folks that don't value that, you probably don't want to be working with them anyway, because they may be, a little more bottom dollar focused rather than relationally focused. At the end of the day, I mean, we're promising to do a good job for a good price and be on time. And that schedule, it's your promise to your clients. You're there at their pleasure. So.
I love that concept of interviewing your client just as much as they're interviewing you, because you want to make sure it's the right fit on both sides of that. And that whole line about I didn't bid this thing so that I have to fight you to get everything that we deserve or everything that we need to make this successful. We bid it so that we can become partners on this thing, and we can both be successful on this job.
Yeah, and that's one of the hardest fights we have. I feel like more and more in construction, the cost of capital is high. So, somebody says, all right, we're going to start in 30 days, and then it becomes 90 days. And as soon as you start, you're behind, and all the while, the delivery time frames get compacted more and more and more. And, just trying to set a realistic expectation for, hey, this is when we can probably realistically deliver the job, and you need to assume some weather time. You may have supply issues in your area, if you're stabilizing a job, whatever it may be, especially in the last 36 months. We've all gone through some kind of supply constraint issue, and just trying to set a realistic expectation up front and then seeing if that's accepted by the owner or the client, whoever it may be. That's half the challenge, I feel like.
I mean, if you, in my experience, if you can have the conversation, you can be transparent about it, you can typically work through a solution.
Yeah,
it's the surprises.
Yeah,
that's what derails you.
Our saying is, we're going to be a good communicator, good or bad, and that's all most people want. They want to know what's going on so that they can deal with any challenges or problems on the job, because there's going to be challenges. Nothing's perfect.
That's good. So y'all aren't perfect either.
God, no. Nobody is.
No, sir.
Anybody that says they are, I mean, you're failing every day somewhere.
That's exactly right.
What makes you top shelf is how you act under fire and how you go deal with the problem. You admit it, own it, go on, go fix it, and then, worry about compensation or credit later.
Jonathon, I want to talk about, you alluded to some of the challenges that we all experienced over the last several years with materials and inflation and schedules and some of the things that we had to overcome. You were leading the organization back in 2008 where the market turned. Went through some pretty significant challenges there. Talk about leading the company through a time like that. It's one thing to lead when the work is plentiful and the money's coming in and you're profitable. It's another thing when you're having to lay off half your fleet and make difficult decisions. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, that was there's two halves of my life. There's everything before the great financial crisis and everything after, and it feels like two entirely different lives to me. And one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through is sit in front of folks that I grew up with, that trained me, I worked with, and say, we don't have any work. We had a bunch of residential developers say, hey, we can't pay you for the work you've already completed. If you were in construction at that time, we went through a depression. We didn't go through a recession as an industry. For 4 or 5 years, I felt like we began to feel the effects in 2007. It hit in 2008, and I didn't feel like we were coming out of it till really sometime in 2012. And, going through having to lay off folks, and you're creating all kind of financial hardship. I mean, I'll never forget this. It affected me for a long time, but I laid off a guy. I knew he was really financially stressed, but didn't know he was in this situation. He goes home. He shot his wife, then shot himself, and that's the kind of stuff you tote around with you for a long time, and you got to come to resolution. Like, did I cause this? And you go through stuff like that. And we had to run around. We primarily worked in Metro Atlanta, and then we pretty much spread out throughout the Southeast, and went on half the company pretty well went on the road for a couple of years. Half stayed in town, and we were doing public pipe work, boring and tunneling work, and we were working for tier one railways and a couple of bigger general contractors. And, as we ran around, I made myself a couple promises. I said, I don't ever want to go through this ever again. I never want to have to hurt people like that ever again. And I'm going to do everything I can to diversify our business so we don't have to deal with that, and at least have some other avenues to go hide in when one sector of the economy falls off. And, I came up with a saying to myself. I said, I'm going to hone my sword every day. And what that means to me is I'm going to try and get better at whatever I'm doing every day. And even if they're difficult decisions, I'm going to make them and make them timely. And it's all about making the business stronger so that I never have to go through that ever again. And for nearly 15 years, that's been my motivator in everything I've done.
Wow, Jonathon, thank you for sharing that. I had no idea, and most people never do. That's the burden of leadership, is that no one really understands the decisions and the weight that you have to carry in that role. But you hope that if you ever have to go through something like that, that there's a reason for it, and that you emerge stronger, better, and more committed to your mission than ever before. And it sounds like that's exactly what that time did for you, because since that time, since 2012, your trajectory has been pointing straight up. I mean, you guys have been rocking and rolling since then, and you've doubled the business. You've moved into some different market sectors. Talk to us about the growth. What does it look like today, and what are some of the things that get you excited about what Strack's doing?
Yeah, so we went into the recession with 355 folks. We exited with 45. I was very, very blessed that. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, we literally at one point we were bidding 80 to 100 jobs to get one. And I mean, it was cheap. It was how much could I lie to myself that day to talk myself into the bid, and it was one of those things during the recession. When you won something, you were part happy and part really terrified because of what you had to do to get the job sometimes. But you know, coming out of the recession, we grew. I was blessed to be able to get some of our talent back. I had to let go. We had treated everybody well and right, so I was able to get some key players to come back to work with us, and we're steadily growing. And we got to the point where we just decided to start grading in house. And when that happened, that was about 7 years ago, we really took off. We had grown from 45 to 175 folks by 2017. And then 15 months later, we had 425 folks. So it was a really rapid blow up. What I found is had some good allies in business that wanted to come work with us. I had new and old clients that were a little more willing to talk to us again. They wanted to, package everything up under one contract rather than, it was a little more normal in construction to have, one GC subcontract the pipe guy, the grader, the paver, pre-great financial crisis in our area. Whereas after it was, everybody really wanted one site work contact. So, it enabled us to pick up some new clientele and grow. So from there, we've steadily grown to 600 folks. So,
And you guys are in 8 states now, doing work in 8 states?
yeah, we're licensed in 8 states. We primarily, we work in the northern half of Georgia. We'll get into Alabama some, and then, that I-85 corridor in South Carolina, really from Spartanburg down.
Jonathan, how much of the work is public versus private? Are you guys doing a lot of public work?
Not as much as I probably want to be doing in the coming years, but we're anywhere 10 to 15% of our business is public. I really want to get that to, a third of our business at some point.
Yeah, that's you talk about the diversification. That is a great way to protect yourself from downturns in the economy, is to make sure that you don't have all your eggs in that residential or commercial basket or the public basket. We learned that here during COVID. I mean, we realized how dependent we were on the residential market. And what we found was those guys, they have the ability to just press stop. And they can sit on that for a little bit. They can wait on the market to come back. Whereas, the public funds were still flowing. There were still projects. There were shovel-ready jobs flowing, and we weren't in that space. And so I think we came out of that time with the same mentality that you did, that we've got to diversify. We've got to have some protection against that. Did you guys are also doing something I would love to be in, but you guys are doing it. It's the railroad business. You do a lot with the railroads, correct?
Yeah, historically, that started for us late 90s, 99 or 2000, and has been a mainstay of our business. It's a unique niche.
Are they still building railroads?
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's some steady work. We're about to go to work with some other partners here in North Georgia and build an inland intermodal facility with
the intermodals, the ports. You guys are in a great market for some of that too.
Yep. We're blessed. We're blessed to have some experience in it, and it's a really good client base to work for. Because I don't know about you guys, but anytime you can work for the owner and end user, they are much better to work for, because they're more apt to look at it from a long range investment standpoint. I mean, think about a railroad yard. You don't see many shut down. Yeah, they're there for a while.
That's right.
Yeah.
And their capital budgets, they're looking out 50 years.
That's right. It's an entirely different thought process for them. I mean, it's a niche not everybody's in either. So it's a little less competition always helps.
Jonathan, congratulations on all the success. It's really cool to see what's going on. What's Dad think about all this growth?
Well, Dad, he loved to see it grow. And then when we really took off, 6, 7, 8 years ago, that was a pretty big adjustment for him, because, he used to know where every crew was, every tractor was, and he'd ask me, all right, where's Roy at? Well, I know where Roy is. He's like, well, where's, so-and-so or whatever big excavator. All right, Dad, I know where they are for the month. I don't know where they are for the day. And I've got a team of folks, and it was a very odd dynamic he's used to coming to one place to get his information. And I remember I had a real specific conversation with him. He got to where he would take a 4 or 6 week long trip to Colorado in the winter and ski. And he was coming back one year. I'd just gotten married, and I said, "Dad, look," I said, "I can't continue to recap my day. You and I, out of respect, I run by everything I'm doing with you, but I'm out of time. I've got my own family now. We're growing. 90% of the time we reach the same conclusion, and it's just things I can't tell you every day. You shouldn't have to worry about it. Worry about the big picture stuff and start to think about how to enjoy retirement. But, he loves being here. So it's been an adjustment, but I think he's appreciated where we're at now too.
That was kind of a passing of the torch moment for you there. Like,
yeah,
he probably realized, you know what, Jonathan's right. I don't need to know all of it. He knows it. And, well, that's really cool. And, I want to talk about, we talked about it at the beginning of the podcast, and I want to circle back to it. One of the things that strikes me the most about you personally, but also about the culture that you've helped create is this common thread of servant leadership. And we hear that term used a lot, and everybody says it's almost a buzzword, but I can't think of anyone that lives that out better than you. And it's not just how you choose to lead, it's also how you empower your team to lead too. How have you created that? And I know, I feel like I know where it comes from. That's just who you are. But how do you replicate it? How do you continue? How do you hire for it? How do you make sure that you protect that with the growth?
Well, so this really starts in becoming comfortable about talking about who you are, where you came from, which traditionally in construction we're not. Like, hence we're on a podcast right now. Like,
right.
Who would have thought 10 years ago we'd be doing this?
Your granddad definitely did not do any podcasts.
No, and we have not been good sellers or representatives of the great story of our industry, and the same for our companies. So, we grew. Obviously, you go through growing pains, and you got to figure out, what makes you you, and somehow get that transplanted into this great team you now have. And we decided to sit down, craft our value statement, really restate those values, and we came up with some terms, and we've got 4 core values we ask everybody to make decisions around, and that's better every day, mindful in everything, humble hearts, open hands, and everyone matters. And we're out trying to figure out where those values come from and actually articulate it. We had to have some help with that because we're not the best at talking about ourselves. Had some great marketing folks help us with that. Had a lady that's helped us a long time named Blakely Clark. She really sat down with Dad and I one day and said, just tell your story. I couldn't come up with corporate values or any of that. That's not my skill set, But she was the one that really birthed this idea of, hey, you need to tell who you are. So that's what we set about to doing. And as I started thinking about all these values of what what are represented here, they all come from these men and women I grew up with and taught me everything. Each one of them seemed like they represented a different trade. I mean, in biblical terms, it was, if you really want to know where the core values flow from, it comes from the fruit of the Spirit. And, trying to get all of those values transplanted into your folks, we sat down and said, all right, we got to go set a standard. And I feel like some days we're part parent and part employer, with some of our new hires. And, societally, we've raised these kids, and now we're reaping the consequences as employers. So somehow we got to go fill this gap. So we came up with something called frontline leadership training. short, FLT for short. And what ended up happening, we sat down as a team and said, all right, what bugs us and what do we want to fix? What do we keep seeing as a problem? And what ended up happening was we've got 6 days worth of content taught over 6 months. And what it amounts to is we fill these classes full of folks, about 25 or 30 folks at a time. Each class is going to have 15 to 20 foremen and superintendents, and then it's going to have 5 folks that come out of, one will be out of estimating, one from accounting, project management, one will be a general super, and typically have a safety person commingled in there too. And what we're really teaching, I phrase it as 2 halves of the coin. There's really a professional half and there's a personal half. And the professional half, what we ended up doing was, the ones of us that are running the business, kind of VP level, director level and up, we help teach the content along with the facilitator, a guy named Wally Adamschick.
Oh yeah, we know Wally.
Runs Firestarter Consulting. We've also got another local outfit called Lead Advisors that helps do corporate coaching and organizational development. So what we did on the professional side, we created a sample project, and we take the project all the way from estimating, acquisition, scheduling. We run project financials on it, and we close it out. Like day one, we actually do a live estimate. So we have a 20-line estimate. Some of it's pre-populated with a couple of things left out. We give labor rates and equipment rates, give some production factors like haul-in costs, things like that. And these folks, they've got to go estimate, and they've got a deadline to do it in, just like a public bid opening. And it's pretty fascinating what you find. And what we found throughout teaching this is, the professional side, we're giving a peek top to bottom about who we are, what we do in each section of the company. Because, I got to thinking as a kid, my number one thing I hated as a kid was mom said, because I said so. Most people, if you tell them why you need to do something,
then you get
and
their hearts.
explain it, yeah, like 80% of the people will follow you. So, we do this whole professional side where we do all these things to do with the job itself. We also talk about ethics and values, our company history. We talk about, how we're wired from being a relationally based contractor, how we win work, how we expect the guys to treat the clients on the job. And then we have what I call the personal half. The personal half is, everybody takes a disc assessment. So we learn about, there's no right or wrong to it. But it's all how we interact with one another and recognizing there's different personalities that take, different skill sets to deal with. We talk about some generational leadership training. We actually talk about household budgeting, how can we ask folks to be a good steward of our resources if they're a disaster at home, offer a little bit of personal coaching, and just go through some general goal setting for ourselves personally and professionally. And it's a really cool deal.
Jonathan, I am blown away by that. I am so fascinated by that. Is this your brainchild?
It's our brainchild. I mean, it's yeah, no. This is us sitting around like, man, we have got to go figure out how to set the standard, because it's just like your kids. Your kids are only going to strive for as high as you set the bar, and behavior. You set your standard for what behavior is and what you expect quality and consistency and attitude to be. And people say we can't find people. I tell you what, I mean, 8 to 80, everybody wants the same thing. Doesn't matter what generation you're a part of. You want to be appreciated, that you want to know you're cared about. You want to be able to live life kind of on your own terms, which if you want to live on a lake or have your hobby where you ride four wheelers or hunt or go to the beach or travel, whatever it may be, you need some financial stability to do it. And I mean, once you get some of those needs met, I mean, most folks are pretty happy at what they're doing. Sure.
Absolutely. And who wouldn't want to be a part of something like that, of a company that's going to invest in you at that level? Now, you said 6 days over the course of 6 months. So these are existing team members, superintendents, foremen, and you said some from other resource groups too. Do they go through it one time, or is this something they go through over and over? How does that work?
So the way I've kind of phrased it, this is year one, round one, whatever you want to call it. I think we're going to be doing something all the time. Like we're getting together later this week and we're doing business unit training really as general superintendents and project managers, kind of that next step up. Um, and, the other thing, the folks that are getting on the new hire side, you know, we're headed towards a 5 day orientation right now when we bring them in the door. It's just not responsible to ship some of these folks to the field right out of the gate without at least trying to vet them, give some basic training so you at least got some basic standard day one coming out into the project, you know.
That's so important. So important. And we moved to that 5 day orientation last year. Matter of fact, right across the hall from the studio here, we've got about 8 new team members that are joining the team, and they'll be here all week. And they're going through core values, they're going through DISC, they're going through project setup, and you're just making sure that before we put them out there into the field, that we've given them the tools and resources to be successful and safe.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what we don't do disc on everybody yet. We do that kind of from a foreman level up. And that's something I actually do want to talk to you guys about offline at some point. I'd be fascinated to know what kind of feedback you've gotten from operators, laborers, all that kind of deal to see if it's worthwhile to do. That's part of what I want to grow into is, you know, the fourth day for us is a goal setting session for new hires. We ask them up front, write down at the beginning of the day, what's your 1, 5, and 10 year goals. And, my belief was in doing that, if you don't believe enough to talk about your goals in front of some folks you may have just spent a couple of days with, but may or may not be strangers, you probably don't believe in them enough to go get them. So, at least get your mind around, hey, you may have to get a little uncomfortable to go get them, but they're perfectly achievable if you want to put effort into it intentionally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Jonathon, how do you interview somebody for humble hands, humble hearts, open hands, and everyone matters? How do you identify that in someone? Because that's a challenge, right?
That's tough, yeah. And you need to interview, you may need a little bit longer of an interview. Depending on who you're talking to and all the proper things for HR, you've got to expose a little bit of yourself and be really open when you're doing that. Ironically, I learned a trick a couple of years ago. That's probably 10 years ago now. But,
All right, give us the dirt.
all right. So I was hired more day to day. I was hiring an operator and I was just beat. I was still running work. I was bidding. So I'm talking to this guy behind my desk and I'm hungry. It's the end of the day. So I'm eating chips and I'm loud, I'm crunchy, I'm smacking. And this guy, he was as nervous as you could be. But immediately when I started eating and got down on some common level in his eyes, it was just disarming, it seemed like. So I tried it. I picked up on it by the end of the interview and I tried it a couple more times. And that's, just be yourself. I mean, the first thing you ought to interview is, obviously, hey, where are you from? How you doing? How do you grow up? What's your hobbies? Like, learn about the person and try and find a way to set your interview up around that, and then get to professional experience and competency and all that, because you know the first half makes or breaks the second half to me.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. It's amazing how just the simple act of you eating your chips kind of disarmed everything, and it turns you in.
Yeah,
All of a sudden, you weren't the boss man. You were just a man at that point, and you became a little bit more approachable and humble. And I love your approach. And you know, I started off this thing asking, how do you maintain this culture that you've created? And I think you've given us some really good answers to that. That understand what makes you you, understanding those values, coming to terms with that, and then being very vocal about that, being open about that. One of the things I love about you too, Jonathon, you are extremely vocal and open about your faith and how that's played a part in your life and in the success of your company, and how you lean on that to make decisions that impact the company. I love that, and I would imagine your team appreciates that vulnerability and that authenticity as well.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I never thought about having chaplains in our business until we grew. Um, so I was on LinkedIn one day, and credit to Wright Brothers, I was looking at their social media feed on LinkedIn one day, and it was a can't remember the name of the project or who it is, but it says, "Hey, here's our company chaplain on the job, holding a devotional with our guys." I'm like, whoa. So I went and talked to my CFO about it, and he said, he says, there's actually a service for that. There's a service I've used before at another company called Marketplace Chaplains, and we've got a chaplain on staff, and we have third party folks that they're all over the place in any area we work in. And one of the things that spurred this conversation was we actually had a suicide in the company, and it was really a realization to me that like I talked about before, we had been this really tight knit unit that grew slow. Everybody knew one another, but when I grew really quick, I said, we always have an open door policy. I had been around this individual that committed suicide about 2 weeks prior, and this was a normal person. He, acted like anybody else, 41 years old, just went through a divorce and then went home and shot himself. And I said, good Lord. I mean, there's plenty of people here that care about folks and that would have done anything to help had we known or had we had any signs. So, that's what really led us to a chaplain service.
That's that 50% personal side that you talk about. And I love the fact that you focused on both. We're going to give you the skills and the tools to know how to do the job, but we've got to focus on you as a person as well. The chaplain, the counselors, we've got a nurse on staff here at Hoopaugh now, thinking about their health and their well-being, financial advisors and people that can help you to build a budget and balance a checkbook, those kind of things. That's part of the role too, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it goes back to the whole, it's the part parent thing. We used to learn this at home, and societally, we don't learn it at home. And, we're in a business that is a really long burn business. Stuff doesn't happen quickly. We're not tech, which is kind of opposite to what the world wants you to do now. We got to slow down and hone our craft and really be good at it for a long time. Like, we don't get redos. We don't have patches for software. We got to do it right the first time, and sometimes the only time we can do it. And that's not something think about it. I mean, anything we teach our kids growing up in any environment, they're allowed to fail and try over again or do over again. That's not the case with what we do. And it's a very different environment for people that are coming into it.
Well, Jonathon, I could sit here and I could talk to you for days. I just love hearing your story. I love hearing what you guys are doing down there. Hats off to you for what you and your team have accomplished. I love the frontline training program. I might steal a couple ideas that you dropped on us today because I think it's great.
Yeah.
I don't get jealous of much, but I am jealous of your playground, your equipment playground, and a little of your beard too, and a little of your beard.
Yeah.
But you
I've
guys
been
are
able to do it.
yeah, you're doing a great job, and it's been an honor to be able to collaborate with you and your team and to share ideas and best practices. We're all in this together. You get that. And anything that we can do for your team, I hope you know that you can lean on us.
Yeah, same here. Anything you want to know, I'm open book, and that's like anytime somebody wants to come see our simulators or whatever, come on, because that's one thing our industry's got to get used to. There's not a whole lot that's secret, and if we don't go help one another and raise the level of standard across the industry, we're going to be struggling for a long time. So,
yeah, the formula is not secret and shouldn't be secret. The secret, what makes you better than your competitors, is your people. That's the secret. But the formula should be out there. We should all be playing by the same rules, same book, playing from the same blueprints. That's what you want. You want to compete against people and work with people that are doing it the same way and thinking about things the same way.
Yep, I agree.
Well, Jonathon, thank you so much for carving out some time for us to give us the dirt. It's been an honor and a joy to have you on the show today.
All right. Well, thanks a bunch. I appreciate it. Hey, and, thanks for leading the way because no joke, our visit to you guys, it inspired a lot. Y'all are at the forefront of the industry, and you should be really proud of your reputation and the culture you've created there too, because it speaks for itself. And anytime y'all's name comes up, it's it is top shelf all the time.
Well,
so
thank you very much for saying that. We've got an incredible leader here and an incredible team, but we too, Jonathon, are still learning and every day trying to get better and better. And you guys have helped us too. And again, we need to share those ideas, but thank you very much for saying that. It means a lot. Jonathon, I'll let you get back to it. I know you've got a team that needs you out of the recording studio and back out on the field. So enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks again for being on the podcast.
All right, thanks a bunch.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Give Us the Dirt. Our podcast is powered by Hoopaugh Grading Company in Charlotte, North Carolina, and produced by Well Run Media and Marketing. Visit our website at giveusthedirtpodcast.com and subscribe to this podcast on Apple and Google so you never miss an episode.